All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sasha Perotti, and I work on the community engagement team here at MAPC, Greater Boston's regional planning agency. And we're so excited to have you here today. Before we get started with our speaking program, I just wanted to give you a few tech orientation notes. We are being recorded for this event so that we can share it with folks afterwards along with the slides. It will mostly capture the speakers from today's event as well as the slides, but if you want to ensure that you are not being recorded, please feel free to turn off your video. You will be muted throughout this event. However, we really encourage you to communicate with us through the chat, and you can do that by clicking on the little chat button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We encourage questions throughout this event, and if we don't have time to get to your questions today, we will follow up with an FAQ document afterwards. So please share your questions and we will get to them at some point. You are also welcome to change your name if you'd like, if you want to add your pronouns or the organization or municipality you're representing today. You can do that by hovering over your name and clicking on more. And lastly, if you'd like to change your view, then you can do that as well. We will be largely in presenter and speaker view today. However, you can adjust your Zoom however you need. Lastly, I would just like to note that we do have closed captioning available today, and you can access closed captions by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Alternatively, there is a More button, and there you should see Enable Closed Captions. And with that, just to give you an overview of our time together today, we will have opening remarks from Mark Drayson, our executive director, followed by a keynote speech from Senator Sal DiDomenico. My colleague Naji Nunnally and I will be offering a language access presentation to share a little bit more about the work that we have been doing through MAPC and with our project partners. And we will close out with a language access panel with folks who have been doing language access work across the region and have been in particular working with us on some of these efforts. So again, thank you so much all of you for being here today. We're really excited to have you here. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mark to share a few opening remarks.
Sasha, thank you so much. And welcome to everyone who's here. I am just going to change the view from speaker to gallery because when I'm talking, I can't stand watching myself on the screen while I speak. So good afternoon to everyone. This is a very important I would say momentous event for MAPC. We are, as an organization, deeply committed to ensuring that we engage in public processes, not only those folks who are always at the table, come to all the meetings, speak all the time, even though those folks have a deep and abiding commitment to their communities. We want to make sure that there is an opportunity for everyone to be at the table and for the table to be large enough to accommodate everyone. And one of the ways in which the table is large enough is if we communicate in various languages to all the people who have an interest in being involved in this process. I'll tell a short story that comes from early in my tenure at MAPC. We were doing a project with our data services department, Emerson College, and which is, of course, right around the corner from us here and focuses on communications issues, the city of Boston and the Chinatown neighborhood. And of course, one of the issues we were dealing with in Chinatown was multiple languages among residents, and most of the meetings conducted in English. And I remember someone coming over to me and saying, well, it's really not a problem, because look at how many young people there are in the room. These are the kids of these parents, and they all know both languages. They will go back and make sure that the parents know what went on. And on the one hand, that was adorable, and I'm glad somebody thought of it, but it is not a sufficient way of addressing our public responsibility to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to hear, to speak, and to be heard in conversations about the distribution of public resources or the making of critical public decisions that will affect their neighborhood, their town, their city for a very long time to come. The Language Access Guide and the work in individual communities that went into developing the Language Access Guide provides a toolbox for cities and towns, community-based organizations, members of the legislature, and others to begin to address the language issue in public processes more seriously and more effectively than it has been in the past. It's trite to say that this is a nation of immigrants. It is also very important to recognize that Massachusetts has not only historically been a state of immigrants, but every single day we are seeing more nationalities, more languages, more cultural perspectives brought into our Commonwealth and into our economy and into our political processes. And that makes us stronger and richer and better in so many ways. One of the things we have to do to recognize that is to try and speak to people in the languages they understand more frequently, more effectively, and with greater care and concern than we have in the past. I am very hopeful that this project is going to be an important step along the road to accomplishing that in our cities and towns. I want to particularly call out Sasha and Naji and thank them for their leadership role in this work. I know that many other members of our staff were involved, Gloria Wangpu, I believe, also, and others. And I am hopeful that Sasha and Naji will give the complete list because I don't have the complete list. I do want to say that someone who was involved in this very early on, Alyssa Kogan, who's no longer at MAPC, is joining us on the screen today, which I'm very happy. It's great to see you, Alyssa. And I see many board members, city and town representatives, and a few gubernatorial appointees to the MAPC Council. I'd like to welcome you as well. So with that, I think my next responsibility is to introduce Senator DiDomenico. Sal and his team at the State House have been great allies and partners of MAPC in so many legislative and budgetary fields. Everything from district local technical assistance, which funds some of our work, a lot of our work on the small scale here at MAPC and the other RPAs around the country, to really big, massive issues like the access to counsel question for tenants in eviction proceedings, which is an issue that Senator DiDomenico has championed, and which is a tremendous priority of ours here at MAPC. We always know that if we have an idea to discuss, or if we have a need, or if we have something that we want to advance on behalf of the region, or even an individual community, a conversation with Senator DiDomenico and his staff is probably one of our first steps in accomplishing that. I appreciate the fact that Sal cares about this issue enough to be with us, and it's an honor for me to turn the floor over to him. Senator.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to bring you on the road with me. Actually, that was great. I appreciate all the kind words, and thank you for being a great partner to our office many years now, in MAPC as well. So it's great to be with all of you, and Sasha and Naji. Thank you for your work on this, and to all the folks that are here who have played a role in making this happen on a local level and advocating it for it to happen statewide. You know, when we first started talking about language access, it was brought to our attention that a lot of folks were going to access services and all the public facing agencies and going there maybe once or twice and then giving up because they couldn't get anyone to communicate with them. And they were kind of just fed up and gave up and just said, you know, there's not an opportunity for us to get across what they were trying to accomplish. And as a result, benefits and services that they qualified for were going unused because they didn't bother going back because they figured it was a lost cause. So we have done, you know, in the state government, we pride ourselves on providing services in these programs for folks that need them. And if we can't find a way to communicate with them so they can access them, then we've kind of, we've failed on getting those, we think, great things done and getting them to the hands of the folks that actually qualify for what we're trying to accomplish here. So when we came up with the idea of final legislation with Mass Speaks Coalition, which includes MIRA, MLRI, Mass Appleseed, and the Justice Center of Southeastern Mass, we put a strong strategy together with the help of 65 organizations, including all of you folks here. So it is, it's been a little bit of a journey, something that we thought that we could get done pretty quickly because of the need and the common sense nature of what we're trying to accomplish. But we all know in government, common sense does not always prevail. So that's a quote I want to put in my office someday, because we know a lot of good things that we can do to make people's lives easier and to change people's lives should be done, and it just takes a little longer than we would all hope. But saying that, I do want to thank Governor Healy, because she signed an executive order which actually put many components of this bill into practice today without the need to pass legislation. But we want to make sure we do this to strengthen what she did and to add to it as well. But what she did was sign an executive order, which requires all her departments to develop language access plans and identify language access coordinators in each of these agencies. Now, that's great, and we appreciate that, and that's a great start. But the bill that we have filed goes one step further to make sure that we actually have that in practice, and that actually happens in the field, and make sure that people feel comfortable going to our government agencies and be able to communicate with the folks that are behind that counter. So we know that 140 languages actually are spoken in Boston alone, and 1 in 10 our residents in our state are better served with language other than English. And we also know that 850,000 people across the state who are over the age of 5 have limited English proficiency. So we know that, and we don't know the facts don't lie. And we know that without some way of changing that dynamic and making it more, accessible to our folks, then we are leaving a lot of people behind. And, before COVID, things weren't great. People always say, well, after COVID, things got better. Let's just be honest. Before COVID, things were not, this was a lot of gaps in our system. Coming out of COVID, we need more than what we had before COVID. And that's the misconception people have in government, that we've turned a corner, we can kind of go back to the old way. The old way wasn't working. So this is something that we feel very strongly about. We have gotten this bill with the help of so many people on this call out of the State Administration Committee, and is now Ways and Means, Senate Ways and Means. And that is a great first step to getting this bill across the finish line. But we also need your help, because we know that anything that we do in the State House is largely not done by us. It's done by the outside forces who are saying enough is enough. We're not going to take no for an answer anymore. And we are going to band together to get this done. And, all the big pieces of legislation that I've been involved in, Student Opportunity Act, universal school meals, even some things that we're still trying to work on, like wage theft. All the things that we have gotten any momentum built up behind is because people outside have been pushing hard to get it done. That's how change is made at the State House. That's how we're able to get the good things that we care about done for the people that don't have time to come on the line today, because they're too busy trying to go to work every day. We're trying to survive and try to support themselves and their families. They don't have time to advocate for themselves. And they're hoping that people like us, people in government, the advocates, the nonprofits, are going to be their voices to get things done to help them. And in many cases, people are cynical of government because it just hasn't worked with people over the years. We have a chance to turn the tide here. With this bill, we can show people that we are listening, we know where the gaps are, and we're going to address that. And with their help, we can get this done. So we have a two-pronged approach with this. Obviously, we have the budget, which is happening fairly quickly in April and May for the House and the Senate. And then we have the standalone bill that we're working through the legislative process. So with, the call to action that I'm giving all of you You already know this, and a lot of people here are advocates already. But the folks that are doing this in our local cities and towns already, thank you very much for doing this, because you're providing a tremendous service to the residents of your community. But we also need this to have, not a patchwork system throughout the entire state. We need to get this done for our, state agencies as well. So I need your help. I need your help. So, whatever you can do to contact the Ways and Means office, to have your legislators contact Ways and Means, and let them know this is an important bill for you and people that you represent, your friends, your family, and people in your communities. And let them know that this is a bill that you want to see discharged from Ways and Means and brought to the Senate floor for a vote. And I can guarantee you, if it comes to the Senate vote, the floor for a vote, we will get this passed. We have to get it across that line to get it to the floor. So that is what I'm asking all of you today. There's a lot of messages there, but it's simple ask of just help me, help you, and help the people we all care about. That's what we can do together. So I appreciate your time and appreciate all that you do. And thank you for having me out here today. And I have to run to another event now, but it's always a pleasure being with MAPC. And thank you for all the great work that you do, not with just this, but so many things that we work on together.
Thank you so much, Senator DiDomenico. We really appreciate all the work that you've done for the state on language access. And thank you for making the time to be here with us today.
Great. Thank you very much.
So hello again, everybody. As I mentioned earlier, and for those who just joined, my name is Sasha Parodi, and I work on the community engagement team here at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is Greater Boston's regional planning agency. And I'm really excited to talk to you about language access today, partially because it's the only thing I've been talking about for many months. And how fun is it to talk to 152 people at once about something that's mostly been a conversation with myself and many others. So we got into language access work here at MAPC as a regional planning agency because we saw that there was a growing need for it in our projects and in our communities. We know that Massachusetts is the 10th most linguistically diverse state in the country, and that 1 in 10 people in Massachusetts can benefit from services provided in languages other than English. We also know that there are a lot of barriers to providing language access services, especially when it relates to budget and staffing capacity, and we were particularly seeing this on the municipal level. We also knew that there was a lot of awesome work happening on language access, that there were many advocates, some of whom are in the room today, who have been doing a lot of work on the ground to bring the services that their people need to their communities. And so we really wanted to partner with other folks in the region who are looking to expand their knowledge about language access, to really develop a better understanding of how we can support municipalities in establishing language services for their communities. And so we partnered with the town of Arlington, the town of Milton, the city of Beverly, the town of Randolph, and the Blue Hills Community Health Alliance to launch a language access project in which we could explore and build some of that knowledge. And that is really what laid the foundation to the guide that we will be sharing with you today. And we really hope that this guide can serve as a reference point or offer resources to you as you explore ways that you can either introduce or expand the language access work that you're doing in your community. Before I talk about the project, I want to share why I do language access work. This is preteen Sasha from a time in my life when I had just moved to Russia after spending my early childhood in the United States. My mom is Russian and I was born in Russia. And when I entered 5th grade, we moved back to Russia. And when I started school, I was 2 grade levels behind my peers. I spoke with a pretty heavy accent, and I was bullied and misunderstood often because I wasn't able to communicate with my peers as effectively. And I think a lot of people can relate to that experience, whether you've been to a new school or you've traveled to a different country or you've moved to a new place. A lot of us have entered environments in which we may not understand the cultural dynamics or the language and have to work to be heard or understood. And I think that is a challenge that is especially hard to overcome as adults in a time when rates of social connection are really declining. Language disconnect happens all the time, and you don't have to be speaking different languages to not understand each other. Across age, across dialects, across lived experiences, the way that we use words and the way that we understand the words we're using really changes depending on who we are. And unless we're orienting each other to the spaces that we're in, it's really easy for people to end up being outside observers and to not really be able to access the things that they need. And that's a problem. In my case, I was really lucky. I had family and a very supportive teacher who helped me catch up to my peers and feel more included in my community. But it shouldn't have been on any one of us to do that individually. And when I think about people in Massachusetts and what I want for them, it's for everybody, regardless of the language that they speak and regardless of the access needs that they have, to feel welcomed and included and empowered to thrive in their lives. And I believe it's on us as public servants to really create that environment. And language access can be a wonderful tool for us to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the project. Together with our project partners, we really wanted to develop a better understanding of what language access could look like at the local level, especially in communities where that budget and that staff capacity may look different for folks. And so we worked together with our project partners to expand the resources that they offered in multiple languages to their community members, and to develop a better understanding of specifically what non-English language communities lived in the region and were participating in our project partner communities. We worked together to develop a definition of language access that includes disability access within that definition, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And we also hosted a monthly conversation space with other folks from municipalities, service providers, community-based organizations, people who cared about language services, who cared about language justice, who wanted to come together and talk about their challenges, their successes, their learnings, and to really hear from each other. Those conversations have been some of the most valuable parts of this work. We've really learned a lot from one another, and our conversations have ranged from the nitty-gritty of how to procure language services as a government entity to talking about how we can foster cultural belonging in our communities, to exploring the different technical tools that we can use to make language access service provision easier. And we will actually be continuing these conversations following today's event. So if you're interested in joining, we will drop a link in the chat and we'll also share it in the follow-up email. You're welcome to sign up and join this monthly space that we host. It's usually on Zoom. And lastly, my colleague Naji will speak to this a little bit later today, but we did pull together a list of recommendations for primarily municipalities, but I think it can be applied to organizations and advocates who are wanting to establish language services in their communities on the work that you can do and the steps that you can take to make language access possible and sustainable in the place that you work, live, or play. So I just want to share the definition of language access that we came to as a group, and this was developed in collaboration with our project partners as well as our roundtable participants. And we really wanted this to be an adaptive frame that you can use for a world that is constantly changing. We know that nobody is ever going to be 100% prepared for every situation that might come our way. And especially in government, we might have people walking through our doors and not know what they need off the bat. But this definition and the tools in this guide, they're really meant to give you a foundation and resources to help you be more adaptive to the needs of the people who you're interacting with. And so we've defined language access as the practice of designing public process, services, and communication that are offered in plain language, include multiple languages through translation, interpretation, or in-language facilitation, meet people's access needs, and that can be through closed captions, through sign language interpretation, but also thinking about language access needs in terms of learning needs and understanding and comprehension. So offering information through multiple modes of access, such as providing videos along with visual materials, along with written materials, giving people multiple ways to really get at the information that they need and to interact with that information. And lastly, communication that honors and celebrates people's cultures. So when I get overwhelmed by language access, when I'm not sure where to start, these are the pillars that I come back to. This is my foundation, my baseline. How am I communicating with people? Is it clear? Is it easily understandable? Do I need to explain any of the words that I'm using? And I'll note on the topic of plain language, which we define as communication that can be understood at a 7th or 8th grade reading or comprehension level, that this is the one tool that is free and that you can use right now immediately. How often do we get that? A tool that is free that we can just go ahead and use. So I really encourage you to explore how you can incorporate plain language into your work, because that is a way that you can make everything you're doing more accessible without any additional budget or time or cost. And so we really think that plain language is a big pillar of this, because we all benefit from plain language, for more direct and clear communication. And that allows all of the other language access steps we may take to be even stronger and more accessible to people. I also just really want to point out that we have disability access included in this definition. We think it's really important that disability access, and somebody in the chat also mentioned access to information for neurodivergent folks, which I think falls under this. If you're not communicating clearly, if somebody can't understand you, even if they speak the same language as you, then you are not providing language access. And so we really wanted to make that clear, that when we're thinking about people's experiences with language, it's not just about what language they speak, it's about how they're understanding and connecting to that language and how they're accessing the information at hand and able to also share back the information that they need to get across to you. So again, we really hope that you can use this as adaptable tools. And fundamentally, what this comes down to is really working to treat people with the care and the dignity that every individual deserves. And this brings me to my final point before I pass it to Naji, which is that we think about language access in a language justice framework. And it's really important to say that providing language access services does not mean that you have created language justice or achieved language justice. Rather, we really see language access as a step in the journey towards language justice, which we've come to understand as an environment in which every person can meaningfully take part in all aspects of daily life, in which our systems and processes consistently adapt to people's needs, and where everyone can not only act, but lead in their community in the language and format and method of communication that works best for them. Ultimately, whether you're at the beginning of your journey or well on your way with language access, what we're inviting you to do at the end of the day is to work with the people who are in your community, to work with the person standing in front of you, understand what their needs are, understand what will work best for them, and identify the tools and the programs and mechanisms that you can use to support them in accessing those things. We really see language access as a collaborative process, and we want people to be active participants in something that's going to really impact their quality of life. And so we really invite you to work with people. The goal here is not to have every answer. The goal is to try and to ask and to collaborate and to let people know that they're not an inconvenience, that their presence here matters, and that you are going to do what you can to understand them and make sure that they can understand you. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Naji to share a little bit more about the language access guide and some of the learnings that we've had from it.
Cool, appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is very exciting. This is a long time coming. This is definitely collective work and collaborative work. So first off, my name is Naji Nunnally. He is a community engagement specialist here at Metropolitan Area Planning Council. I will also point out public speaking is not my thing, so I had to make sure I put a little script together for today. So to begin, I will point out that I am not fluent in another language, at least formally recognized. And so I'm sure that there are many folks in attendance today who are not fluent in another language as well. However, my commitment to language justice does not waver as a result. You do not need to be fluent in another language to be committed to language access and ultimately language justice. It's not that I can't learn another language, like Spanish, for example, but when I think about this deeper, I'm also reminded of my ancestors. As we proceed through today's session, I would be remiss if I didn't take the time to acknowledge Black History Month. And so as we think about Black History Month and language access, I will say in short, we're having this presentation and this panel discussion in English. This is by way an acknowledgement of the real consequences of settler colonialism. I'm reminded of my ancestors because I know my ancestors spoke maybe 4 or 5 languages that I don't know, that may not even be able to be spoken anymore. And as many of the indigenous people have lost their languages because of a plan that was made in a room with people who decided to divvy up a continent and then whole worlds and so forth. In the stripping of their language and land, culture was also stripped and compromised. That is what strategic planning looks like on the evil side. So we're going to get busy planning on the good side. We will get planning on the good side to create a society we want to live in, the type of society where culture and language are preserved. Lastly, we live in a society, or in particular, a Western settler colonial project called the United States that has a very imperfect formal education system. It cannot be emphasized enough to be considerate of literacy levels and abilities. Now let's dive into the guide. Sasha spoke to some of this, and here are some purposes of the guide. What we hold in high regard is centering community in our work and centering those that have been harmed. It is our belief that this guide very much does that as a true beneficiaries community with a capital C, and also various communities that make up the Commonwealth. We want every person in Massachusetts to take part in their community. This means eliminating barriers that will enable folks to participate regardless of language or ability. One of the key takeaways that we believe you'll be able to identify is that language access is just not 1 or 2 things, but rather multiple moving parts. These moving parts will only strengthen your ability to support your respective community and ultimately strengthen the community at large. In a nutshell, this guide pulls together knowledge and practices that already exist. We really wanted to highlight all the tremendous work that is happening across the state. Continuing on and thinking about those moving parts, here are the major sections that make up the guide. There's a language access glossary section that is not reflected, but I'll speak to that shortly. We have an overview page highlighting the many sections included in our guide. This will allow the many users and reviewers to jump to particular sections that they need or will get the most benefit from. I highly encourage municipalities to take the time to read this front to back. Some of the sections worth highlighting include procurement, ADA accessibility, and sustainable language access practices. These sections and others are derived from our various roundtable discussions and follow-ups. What you'll see here displayed is our language access guide contents, and I will move in a clockwise motion, starting off with at the top in green, beginning with terms and key takeaways. Terms are often evolving and terms are reflected in the guide, and terms reflected in the guide may look different in 5 to 10 plus years. Key guide takeaways and project takeaways are included. A project summary that includes our roundtable summary and notes, which again is primarily where we were able to extract and craft content for this guide. Next, we have our project partner section highlighting our fellow partner communities, key staff involved, and their current/future work. Included in the guide are resources and templates including those for contracting and outreach to vendors, resources connecting you to other intersecting MAPC initiatives, and a language access glossary that is translated into Spanish, Haitian Creole, Arabic, Brazilian Portuguese, Simplified Chinese, and Vietnamese. Again, this is just to name a few of the many resources. We have a couple case studies included to support any language access endeavors that municipalities take on. This will provide a practical and real-world perspective in your pursuit of language access. There are friendly reminders scattered throughout, including the need for plain language. I would also give a friendly reminder that language access is not the same as language justice. Lastly, there is a where we are going section, which includes recommendations for implementing language access in your communities. As a reminder, this does not cover everything a community can do for long-term, meaningful, multilingual inclusion. We will discuss this deeper in just a moment. Here is a preview of our guide, and reflected, you'll see images from the guide itself. Starting on the left-hand side is our opening page. The second page of the guide highlighting what we hope this guide will be, and a link to language access practitioners in Massachusetts and beyond. I've included the language access overview page highlighting our partners and topics. A screenshot of one of our many tips. These tips call out key information. The one included is our interpretation tip. Lastly, a screenshot of one of our case studies included in the guide. This one is how do other municipalities do it? This is an example of work that was shared with us. Onto lastly, our recommendations page. Included in this guide are a lot of recommendations. These are just some we highlighted that municipalities can take to establish language access practices. Consider thinking about how you and your respective organization and position can support and advance language access work. Maybe you are uncertain of where to start, and maybe a starting point is identifying and understanding the current need in your community. Maybe you're aware of the need, but need to develop strategies to address the need. Remember, any practices and ultimately structures created should be flexible and meeting community members where they're at. We know historically institutions were not designed to be flexible. All in all, our hope is that you identify one thing and work on that. Use that one thing to build up to the next thing. Identify what level your organization or municipality is at. Choose the journey that will best meet the needs of your community, and a journey in which you have the capacity to do the work in a sustainable way. There are various stages in the journey. The point is just to get started somewhere. You do not need to reinvent the wheel, as there are resources available to assist you in your journey, including this great guide. When determining staff to bring aboard, please understand that the staff need to be supported and empowered to make changes. Empowerment happens at the leadership level. So for example, a language access coordinator needs to be supported by someone at the leadership level and provided the autonomy to lead the effort. Not only is it an investment in our community's ability to do the work, but ultimately an investment in long-term investment in community. The kind of investment that can be seen and felt. The type of investment that makes community members feel like they belong in their respective community. Regardless of ability or literacy level, community members should be treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve, and not feeling like they are a lost cause or don't know where to go for support. The investment we speak to does not mean that the results will happen overnight, or that because X investment is made, it will yield X results. This will not only be the case, and quite frankly, this is not always the case and looks different in different places. Just because the results are not present based upon X investment does not mean that it should be disregarded or forgotten about. Stick with it. So, in conclusion, this is collective work. This is not just two people doing this work, but rather a collection of people contributing to a journey and a product that will benefit all people, all communities. If everyone does a little bit, no one has to do a lot. That being said, I want to give some special shout outs to those that are doing their respective little part. In no particular order, shout out to Sasha Perotti for her great leadership, her support, her lens that she brings to the table day in and day out, and her commitment. Our working group partners from Randolph, Arlington, Beverly, Milton, and the Blue Hills Community Health Alliance, the Mass Speaks Coalition, the panelists that we brought on for our roundtable discussions, legislators who have advocated in supporting the language access bill, to other folks around the state and region who provided us helpful insights. The staff at MAPC who directly contributed and supported us along the way, and in particular our communications department and legal counsel. MAPC for creating the opportunity for us to do this work. And last but not least, the varying folks across the Commonwealth who have a deep, unwavering commitment to equity and justice. Those staff who center community in their work. This includes fellow language access practitioners of past and present. This is not hard work, but this is heart work. Next, we'll transition to a brief presentation by Iris Coloma-Gaines, who was very supportive of our project since the first day we connected with her. She has a lot of experience and helpful insights to share with our audience today.
Thanks, Naji. And thanks, Sasha, to both of you for the opportunity to present today. I feel privileged to present among all these folks that are really interested in language access. So as Naji mentioned, my name is Iris Coloma-Gaines, and I'm the language access attorney at the Massachusetts Law Reform Institute. MLRI is a Massachusetts anti-poverty law center and support center for civil legal aid and community partners, addressing and combating poverty, ensuring access to justice, and advancing racial equity frames MLRI's advocacy. I am a first-generation Latina and the oldest child of Peruvian immigrants. So if the Spaniards had not conquered the Incas, I would be speaking Quechua to you right now, but I am speaking Spanish. I have been in my role at MLRI for almost 5 years now. So language access benefits all of us. As mentioned by Senator DiDomenico, during the pandemic, there were folks who were eligible for unemployment benefits who could not access them for months, if at all, because the online applications were not available in their language. Some didn't know how to protect themselves or others from COVID because information was not available in their language. When these folks are served right the first time, it prevents them from going into crisis and losing housing, food stability, their children, and sometimes even their lives. It costs way more to do this right the first time. Costs way less to do this right the first time than the cost of unraveling the crises. So municipalities that are federally funded recipients are subject to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And that is an anti-discrimination statute that prohibits discrimination based on various protected classes, including national origin. And the discrimination based on national origin is a proxy for language access. So basically what that means is when we don't provide language access, we are basically discriminating against somebody based on their national origin. So as Senator DiDomenico mentioned, we are hoping the Language Access and Inclusion Act will pass to be a model for legislation for language access on the municipality level. Right now, like I said, municipalities that are federally funded recipients, which may be many, if not all of them, are subject to Title VI at this point, but we are so grateful that municipalities, regardless of their legal obligations, are really interested in providing language access to their communities and understand the importance of language access and how it benefits all of us and not just those who are better served in a language other than English. I wanted to point out some pointers for achieving language access. One, you need to remember that someone who you can have a conversation with in English may still need language access. So if you envision yourself taking a trip to China and you've taken a Chinese course maybe to learn some basic Chinese, but all of a sudden you have a very important thing to deal with, whether it's you got a speeding ticket, you have to go to court, you have to go to the hospital. When things happen, situations happen that rise to the level of more importance and there's more at stake, you're going to want an interpreter in China. That's going to be someone who can interpret and understand your culture, be culturally competent, understand what you're saying, and also you can understand them so that you can understand them. So that is what language access looks like. And just be mindful of the fact that somebody who walks into your office and in English asks for an interpreter doesn't mean that they are asking in vain. They actually will need an interpreter. Or if you notice that, you may want to offer an interpreter to anybody who walks in and say, will you be needing the help of an interpreter? Because that is a right that they have if you're a federally funded recipient, and it is something that would be really helpful for them and for you as the municipality. So aside from that, first off, you really need leadership to be committed to prioritizing language access. This was something that Senator DiDomenico mentioned. Any work you do towards achieving language access at your municipality will be solidified if there's a commitment to serving those that are better served in language other than English by leadership. I can't emphasize the importance of that. I've seen too many agencies that have great protocols, great language access plans, but there's not a culture of complying with that. There's not a culture of keeping the language access plan as a live document. And what ends up happening is there's all these protocols and rules, and maybe even training, but in the end, if there's not a commitment from leadership to prioritize it, then it really is not something that's being effectuated on the ground level to folks who really need it. Second, you need a staff person, somebody who is dedicated to thinking about all aspects of providing language access in your municipality. So it really does need to be a full-time job. And completely understand, like as Najee mentioned and Sasha mentioned, some of you are at the very beginning of the journey. Some of you are partially through it. Some of you are further on. So even if you start with a person who is wearing, the hat of language access plus maybe 4 other hats, that's okay, as long as you realize that eventually what it should look like is somebody who is solely thinking about it. Why? Because there's a lot of moving pieces to communication with your municipality. And in this day and age, it's not just people coming into your office and telephone and written communication. It's online. It is through your website. It's in so many ways. There's ways that you can chat boxes, like there's so many ways to communicate that there needs to be somebody who is thinking about all those different ways, responses from that community, in order to really effectuate language access. Next, you really need a reputable language service provider. There are many language service providers out there. Zarita is going to talk more about the importance of having a reputable language service provider, but that's super important because if you don't have a solid language service provider that, again, is coming into knowing the importance of cultural competence and what it takes to communicate with the community that you're serving, because your community that you're serving, they are the ones who need to understand what you're putting out, right? So it's really important, and you need to understand what they're saying to you. So it's really important that you have a language service provider that can provide that, because not every language service provider is the same. Last pointer I have is training of staff for new employees, as well as annual or biannual training to refresh all the protocols, training on how to work with an interpreter, because just because you provide interpreters doesn't mean that your staff will know how to work with an interpreter. It's a very different dynamic when there's this third person in the room that is basically just their role is to be the voice, but there's a lot of sort of rules and that you need to know around how to work with interpreters, and that's really, really important to know. Also, for your staff to be able to easily access the tools that you provide for language access. So if they have to go through paperwork like 3 levels long of approval, it's really going to be burdensome for them to be able to provide language access. So you want to be able to provide that as in an easily accessible way. So the last thing I want to say is that we have an opportunity here right now in Massachusetts, as you all know. Families are coming to Massachusetts that speak multiple languages. I actually see this, I don't like to call it the migrant crisis. I don't like to call it an influx. I don't like to use water analogies that it's, flooding. I see it as an opportunity for us to enrich our culture, enrich our state with these families, with their culture, their food, their language, with who they are as human beings. Right now, we have, for example, Haitian Creole speaking families that are immigrating here, but after they left Haiti and before they came here, they might have been in Chile for 8 years or in Brazil for 8 years. And if they have children, those children speak Haitian Creole, and they also speak either Spanish or Portuguese. So if school districts in our state here, if they comply with their legal obligations with regard to these children, and if we do right by these families legally and morally, in my opinion, we will have the gift of a trilingual workforce in Massachusetts. And imagine the possibilities. Neuropsychologists, lawyers, teachers, you name it, will be trilingual. Let's take advantage of that and really do right by these families, not only by law, but also by our charity of morality to really invest in these folks and in these families so that we can all reap the benefits and make them part of our community to forge forward in Massachusetts with language access. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Iris. Very helpful, very insightful. Thank you so much for that. And so now we'll transition to the other half of our event, which is our discussion panel. So in this portion of our session, Sasha and I will be your moderators, tagging between questions for our panelists. We will spend the first half of this portion with our prompting questions, and then we'll transition into Q&A with the audience. And following the conclusion of this discussion panel, I'll then pass the baton off to Javier to close us out for the day. Perfect. So great. So we got our lovely panelists up, Penn. Thank you, Gloria. So first, please introduce yourself, tell us your name, organization, and describe your work with language access and why language access matters to you. And we'll start off with Wangari.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving me this chance to connect with you on language access. I am the Director for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging for the City of Beverly. As a multilingual inclusion strategic partner for our city, I work closely with my colleague and Chief of Staff, Jocelyn Ruel-Kaskar, who's here with us today. So shout out, Jocelyn. And like Naja said, that when everyone does a little bit, then no one has to do a lot. I really agree with that. I appreciate the investment each and every one of us brings to make our residents feel welcome and encourage them to participate in local democracy. Language access planning is important to a municipality because over the last decade, Beverly has grown, and we've seen 3,200 of our residents come from communities that speak languages other than English. This has looked more like Hispanic, Latino, 41%, and our Asian community at 21%. As we're looking at making our resources and services accessible to the incoming communities, we started looking at the data specifically from our technologies, our translation technology, because that's where we were able to identify the main need. And what we saw was, even though we were 41% Hispanic incoming residents, the language that we were translating more was Portuguese. This started to raise questions, I think, for us and our team. How are we connecting with our Portuguese community? How are they experiencing our services, and are they feeling welcome? And also, why are they not on the boards? Why are they not on the commissions? Why are we not doing more programming for the community? So this is a part for us where we really tapped into community partners and really reaching out to bootstraps, places where they have adult education, ESL spaces, schools, and starting to grow that partnership. I really do believe that language access and cultural programming go hand in hand, because that's how we build trust. That's how we build a thriving community. So Beverly's excited to have partnered with MAPC and the rest of the partners in this work. And I'll hand it over back to you, Naji.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Wangari. I'll pass it over to Zarita.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, we all kind of live in little islands where we try to find ourselves and do the things we believe. And today I feel very connected and very emotional because I've been doing this. If you believe it or not, I could tell you since I was 8 years old, but it's not true. I started doing this work since 1977. And started with Cambridge Health Alliance, and I see some people from the city of Cambridge. I was a Portuguese immigrant from a privileged background in Portugal, and came here. Spoke French fluently, did not speak English very well, but could understand some, and worked in a factory. No one will hire me with the skills that I had. And working in a factory, I found out that there were lots of women who were being abused. There were issues with tenants. There was issues with substance abuse among many communities, not just the Portuguese community. And so I became involved in helping women, battered women, involved in substance abuse in terms of helping programs, and decided that I needed to learn English because I didn't want to be working in a factory forever. So I had that choice. Not many people have it. And so I started working through a federal funded program, CETA, which many of you maybe were not born when that existed, but through CETA, I got a job as a medical interpreter at Cambridge Health Alliance. My first day, they gave me a broom and told me that I could clean the floors, and whenever I needed, they would call me. And I was middle class, a little assertive, and I said I was not hired to clean the floors. I was hired to help people. And so I started interpreting, and I was knocking at the president of the hospital, saying, they're not using me. What can I do? I'm sitting here. And he got so annoyed with me that he sent me to social service. I think maybe he thought I needed therapy, but I found out a wonderful director of interpreter services. She was a woman who was gay, who had been white, who had been in Africa and spoke French fluently. And she was in the closet as a gay woman. So she understood a little bit of what was going on with me, and we became very close as she guided me through this process. So I started the second interpreter program in the country. First was at Boston Medical Center. I started Cambridge Health Alliance. And from that, I created alliances with the providers who had a union, and in exchange to translate the paperwork and explaining to the patients why they had a union, they had to train the interpreters that I was training. And I ended marrying one of my colleagues, was a physician who passed away recently, who also spoke Spanish. And he helped me developing what I have now, which is an amazing manual of 800 pages with lots of case studies to train interpreters. I've been training interpreters at kindergarten level, almost basically talking about language, and through middle school to high school and then college. So we need to plant seeds and work together as a team. And this is why I'm here, is to kind of work and connect with people about training. Now, providing services, I own a company that does it's called Cross Culture Communication Systems, Inc. And it provides interpreters translations. And we also are an approved school to train interpreters through DPL. So what we do is we don't provide 100-something languages, we provide 47 languages. And we decided that we want to focus on quality and the partnership. So if people need more interpreters in different languages, it takes time to build that muscle, but we will not provide you an interpreter that is not qualified. So we can talk more about it, but my passion has been about language and also about culture and understanding what people's needs are. Very briefly, one of my middle child, and maybe this is a middle child story, she went to Tufts in Somerville, Tufts daycare, a wonderful program many, many years ago. And they made her experience what Rosa Parks had gone through when she was asked not to sit in the front of the bus. So I had another child, a younger child, who fell down the steps, and my daughter started singing to her, and I was so upset. And I said, "Why didn't you help your sister?" And she said, "That's what Rosa Parks did when she was upset. She sang, and that's all what I can do, Mommy." And I realized that she did not know that going downstairs, helping my daughter, making sure she was okay, her sister, she did not know that skill. She just knew what was comfortable to her, and she thought was going to be comfortable to my daughter. So with that lesson, what I learned is that the people who can tell us what they need are the people who need the services. Is that right? Because we can provide all these services and provide them culturally incompetent, maybe not the right education level, the register. So we need to check in with our clients. They are the best people to tell us. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Zarita. Thank you for sharing that story. And we will pass it over to Teresa next.
Thanks, Naji. My name is Teresa, she, they pronouns. I am the Community Outreach and Engagement Coordinator here in Arlington. I work out of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. And we've been a part of the project with MAPC for the last couple of years, and it's been a time of real growth. And we're just really grateful for their partnership and also for all of the partnerships that we've been able to grow with other municipalities, both in the project and people who have arrived at the roundtables and just throughout town. I guess maybe for us, where we're at right now is, although we're working on a number of initiatives, it really feels like we're just getting started. And hopefully moving forward, we'll begin to even deepen our engagement work with the people of Arlington, knowing full well that language access plus engagement is really, we can't just provide the access, we actually have to be in community with our folks to let them know what exists. So that's where I look at it, just as the engagement person. So from that lens, something that we've been really focusing on is partnership building, working with our community organizations here in Arlington, like I said, other municipalities across departments. I think we all know in government, we tend to work pretty siloed. So just being able to connect with other departments and hear about what they're experiencing, what are their needs, how do we best support one another, and then particularly working with the schools to understand both from a data lens, what are they seeing, and also how can we more holistically serve our families. That looks like co-creating multilingual projects, making sure that we are really on the ground with counselors in the engagement office. We've done some great work in the last little bit to work directly with community, to engage them and hear what is it that they need to have a sense of belongingness in Arlington, knowing that cultural belongingness is at the root of building a just community. And to that end, we, for 2 years running, have been able to do a Lunar New Year program, which is very collaborative and has just grown year by year. And then on the staff side, we're trying to scale up our tools to better serve our community and particularly make sure that all staff have a sense of cultural humility so that they can respond when we're interacting with the folks in Arlington. And then thinking towards the future, how do we embed language access into everything that we do as a town government? So how can we put it into all of our processes from HR to the libraries, and then just really building that collective spirit. Language access is really important to us in Arlington. It was highlighted in a community equity audit that we recently did. It came directly from staff during a racial equity workshop that we did last year, and also from community that pushes us to be better. I don't think the work is happening overnight. You know, government work takes time, but it has taken a lot of energy to get us to this place. And I can see where we're going, and it's just an exciting moment to be involved with the town. Like most other municipalities, not most, but many, we don't have a designated person or budget for language access. And I know Iris spoke to just the importance of that, but knowing that even though it can feel like an uphill battle, you're not in it alone, even if it's a portion of the work that you're doing, looking for allies both within the different departments in your municipality, and then reaching out to other communities, communities that might have more of where you're trying to go. And I can see a few folks on the call today. Crystal, I see you. Just knowing that like there are people who are equally committed to the work and want to help you and where you're at progress. And I guess one question we were supposed to answer is, why does language access matter to me? And I think coming at it from an engagement lens and working in the equity office, like language access is equity work. It's how you make a government work for everyone, because you're engaging people in the way that works best for them. And just because it's how we continue to create a thriving, strong and innovative community here in Arlington and also across the state. But yeah, I'm really excited about the place that we've arrived at already. Looking forward to future collective work. And thank you, Sasha and Naji, for having me today.
Thank you all so much. I think you really all spoke to the personal nature of language access and also the amount of work that it takes to really move forward in language access, that it isn't an overnight process, but also that we can do a lot, especially as we work with each other. So really appreciate everything you've shared so far. And just to kind of bring us into the next stage of this conversation, often what I've encountered in talking to people about language access is the first thing that comes to mind is translation and interpretation services. But we know, and I think a lot of folks today have spoken to the fact that language access is a lot more than that. And so I would love to hear your perspective on how language access can be a tool for workforce development, skill development, and also empowering civic participation and leadership opportunities for all members of our communities. And Zarita, I'll invite you to kick us off, and then Wangari and Teresa, please feel free to jump in after that.
Okay. So like anything else, it's a partnership, and the interpreting movement started as a social justice movement, and now there is so many companies and there's so many business, and we all need everyone. But what I would advise you is to really develop a partnership with a company. It's at least 3 to 4 companies. You cannot rely on only one company, especially if you have 140 languages. There is a tendency for companies to specialize in certain languages more than others for whatever reason. So look at the uniqueness of each company and make sure that there is some standards, all the interpreters have to have a qualified training. So if you go on the webpage, you see many interpreting companies in the state of Massachusetts who provide trainings. That's questionable, isn't it? Like if you had everyone who hires in nurses provides also the trainings, it's questionable if it doesn't go through a certain qualification process. So we made sure that we were approved by the Department of Education. So it's not only us providing interpreters and telling you they're qualified, but they have to follow certain protocols, and they're free to apply to any company. So we're not drumming business. So look at the web pages of the companies you hire. If you things to look for, if they advertise that you apply for school and you get hired, that's an issue. Is that right? Because all companies need to interview interpreters. They need to assess them, even if they went through your training. They need to make sure they have the immunizations you demand, because you're working with the public. They need to make sure they understand the different scenarios and situations, political situations. We have people from Haiti, we have people from Portugal, people from Brazil who are from different socioeconomic classes. And classism and racism happens in every country, that we represent all the languages. So we have to make sure that the interpreters are able to be compassionate, are able to listen to the message, and not because of a language barrier, but because of a socioeconomic barrier, because of a gender choice barrier. Language has changed, so the interpreters need to go with that. Is that right? So we need the pronouns. We need to really understand that we also evolve as a group of interpreters, and you are going to be buying these services. So you can't just have one shoe that fits all. What I have seen now, and I think it's too bad, is that, we all want to save money. So you go for companies that can provide 200 languages. And then you find out that some of these languages are being provided from a country where they're paying them real slavery labor. So a lot of the fund companies that we use are paying people who have learned English in their target language in another country, that have been working in terrible conditions. So pay attention to who you have, and pay attention to, and it takes a partnership. So if there is a problem, talk to the company, talk to the interpreter. If you don't want to talk to the interpreter because maybe that's not appropriate, talk to the company, develop a partnership, because nothing is perfect. You're not going to get 100% of everything, but you can always get the best if you do a partnership. So think about not just, sometimes we have phone calls in our company. I would like to order a Russian interpreter. Sometimes I joke and I say, do you like UPS or FedEx? Because we get so anxious. Is that right? We get so anxious when we don't understand the language, and we want to solve it. and solving is ordering an interpreter instead of collaborating. I will request your interpreter service instead of ordering an interpreter. That is a big difference. So we all are human. We all get anxious in situations, and we want to serve, one, because legally you have to serve the populations, but also you are a good person and you want people to be understood and the service to be delivered equally and at the same, giving the same opportunities. So think of, when you do your PFRs or you do your requests, you cannot have one company that can provide service to all of your needs. It just does not work. But there is that thinking, and I think it's a very organization, a very not as culturally competent process of hiring companies that speak another language and provide interpreters. So hear from the companies, get a sense of what the needs are, your needs are, see what companies are out there, and start that process. So you can have remote interpreting, and remote interpreting means on the phone or video. And then you can have in person, and we can, you can have in person with going to an office, and if that person is on call for you all day, and then you might need services in another part of your company or your state or your city, and you might have that person do some remote for services that you can't afford to have someone just for 5 minutes. So the idea of how are you going to divide remote versus in-person? I am an in-person person. I'm a social worker. I am a human services type of person. So my bias is that when you hire people that speak the same language, that look like the patients you are the consumers, and not always patients, the consumers that you serve, you are enriching your company, and you also enriching the community, and you build trust. And so more people come for services, more people use the services, benefit, go to schools, use their time at the school with the kids, and they're not interpreting for their parents. Is that right? What I've seen is there is a big move to go into telephone interpreting and also remote interpreting. And although we can show the world that we're seeing a lot more non-English speakers, and they don't wait so long, what I also have seen is what it happened in 1977 when I started with the interpreter service, that people, the communication is not good, some buildings are old, internet is not working, some interpreters are not qualified. So the adults who don't speak the target language are resorting to the kids again. So when I teach middle school kids, and when I teach high school kids about medical interpreting or community interpreting, I have seen more cases of interpreters saying, oh, I had to interpret for my mother, she had cancer, and the doctor didn't like the phone was taking so long, was making too much noise, and I interpreted for her. And this is a 10-year-old kid. Would you want your kid to be interpreting for you as a mother?
Thank you,
Police.
Teresa.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I think that's a really great segue into kind of the role that municipalities can play in making sure that children are not playing that role and that interpreters are set up for success. I know we've shared some suggestions building off of what you've shared in the chat, but curious, Teresa and Wangari, if you'd like to share anything about how language access can go beyond interpretation or translation, and also how even in doing interpretation and translation, we can be more prepared and really providing those services well.
Yeah, thank you, Zarita. And yeah, so I'll share a story. So here in Beverly, we have our Beverly Parks and Rec. And this is one incident that really inspired me to take time out of my very already full schedule and dedicate this, my time to this work. So we had been discussing, the director of Beverly Parks and Rec and I, and of course our core team, on how we might be able to diversify our counselors, especially for our summer programs, because we saw that our open spaces is a wonderful place to have representation. This led to a success. We had a young man from our local high school, a student apply. He was a Spanish-speaking young man, and he went through the interview, went great. Then when it came to onboarding, that's when it got very complicated for him. He became frustrated due to the sensitivity of the material. We're talking about social security numbers. It was very hard to bring in translators immediately to kind of assist. And I just felt that even though we were interpreting and translating, we had not started to go into the plain English aspect of our onboarding process. And also going to a space of, while we are reaching out to our students, that we are understanding their backgrounds better and what those barriers might be before they're in that space. And now we are learning on a need-to-need basis. How we took that experience to the next step is we are creating a very clear path between City Hall and our schools, because this is where a lot of our students will come from that will join our workforce in the future, and starting to support them on the applications aspects of it, including voting and how all those things are working. So that's just one way that Beverly is doing it.
Thank you, Wangari. Teresa?
I'm happy to answer this question if you'd like, or we can keep it rolling, but I think I can definitely touch on the piece about civic participation, just considering that's in my wheelhouse a bit, or working on getting it more fully in my wheelhouse. But I think civic participation for us in Arlington, something that we were really excited to be able to do during our equity audit was partner with, I see MAPC translations here actually, to bring in a translator to have a focus group with a group of Chinese folks that live in our community, that we know that that's one of our most linguistic, the largest language groups in Arlington is Chinese. And we were able to bring somebody in to sit down and to hear directly from a group of folks, and to use a lot of that information in how we tailored our equity audit recommendations. So I think that was a really shining example of what's possible. And that was because we did some partnership building. We figured out who was able to have inroads with different communities, how to work closely with them, and how to make sure they had what they need, if it was at a time of day that was convenient for them and a location that felt comfortable. And yeah, working with both internal partners and outside partners to make that happen. I think we have a ways to go with a lot of our processes, but I'm happy to see us getting started for sure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I think you really brought kind of the different aspects of this work. And I think a big theme of today, and from what we're seeing in the chat, is there's so much to talk about that, you know, we're just scratching the surface today, and not even really a very big scratch, right? So just to close us out, if you could each share one call to action that you have for folks who are on the call today. And Teresa, maybe you can kick us off.
I would say just get to know your community. Get out there as much as you can. Partnership build. Figure out what are your other departments seeing. Sit down, have conversations with both front end staff, department heads. Try to just get to know who those folks are, what are their needs, and then work outwards. Who are the community organizations in your town that you need to build positive relationships with to most directly serve the folks that you would like to be able to bring in and engage and provide more high quality services with. So yeah, I would just say it takes time, it takes effort, but like there really isn't, there's no replacement for just good relationships with people inside of your organization and people out in the community.
Thanks, Teresa. Wangari, and then we'll wrap up with you, Zarita. Just one thing.
Yes, it makes me think of Senator Ed Markey, something he said at the MMA annual meeting, which is vision without funding is hallucination. So I really do hope that we can get the funding that we need to be able to advance this work forward. So a call to action from me to our leadership.
Thanks, Wangari. And Zarita, do you have one call to action for folks? Oh, Zarita,
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. It's to invest. We need people to pay our taxes. I'm retiring soon, and we need this new wave of refugees and immigrants are so needed in our country. Japan, Portugal, and United States and Canada are looking forward to have young people working. So we need to invest in their education. We need to support them because we all need each other.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our panelists today. We really appreciate you all speaking. If we could, Najee and I would have invited everyone who spoke at all of our roundtable conversations. And I just do want to give another shout out to everyone who contributed to building this body of work. We had over, I think, 19 people contribute to the guide and to our roundtable spaces, and they represent folks from all across the state of Massachusetts, many of whom are in the room today, cities like Cambridge and Boston, Quincy, organizations like Quincy Asian Resources, folks at MAPA Translations. There's a lot of folks, I'm not going to be able to name everybody, but I did just want to shout out that this really is collective work and we are really doing this together. So thank you all for the piece of work that you're carrying forward. I did want to share the guide that we have been talking about in the chat. So we will share it out in a link moving forward, but via email, but you will have the first access to the guide. So please feel free to take a look. Please feel free to share it out, and we will follow up with the recording, the slides, and all of the information about the guide following today's event. And with that, I'd like to pass it to Javier Gutierrez, the director of our community engagement team, to share a few closing words.
Great, well, thank you, and hello. My name is Javier Gutierrez. I'm the director of the Community Engagement Department. First of all, I would like to give a virtual round of applause to Najee and Sasha and all of our partners on their commitment and dedication to ensuring that we can implement language access into the fabric of our work. Furthermore, I would like to thank the panelists and everyone here today for participating. And lastly, I would like to thank our Executive Director, Mark Drayson. The Community Engagement Department supports municipalities in integrating residents' input into policy and planning projects. Our work is centered around engaging those who have historically yet to have a seat at the table in planning and policy making throughout the MAPC region. We envision a future where we can support in answering the following questions. How can we identify? How do we plan? And how do we build capacity to ensure that everyone and those at the margins can participate? So to do it right at its core, we must create spaces for people to understand each other. Language access as a practice does that. In conclusion, I want to offer you with closing reminders and considerations. Number one, language access is the first step to language justice. Number two, invite members of your team to brainstorm on any of the following items. Identify your language access needs, develop a municipal language access plan, develop and pass a language access ordinance, develop a dedicated funds on language access in the municipal organizational budget, hire a language access team, and yes, we can help. Please reach out to us. And remember, if everybody is working together, nobody has to work alone. Thank you again, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.